Chapter 5. The next morning I woke up at about 10 and immediately went to see if Abdelrahman was still asleep. Well, of course he was still asleep, but I couldn't understand why because it was already too late. So I quickly woke him up, saying I was hungry and there was nothing to eat. He got up immediately and said he was going to do some shopping, but I stopped him right away. "You will go? Or do you mean we will go? Right?" Abdelrahman said he'd be right back and that I'd better wait in the home for him, but I didn't want that. I exclaimed, "I came to Egypt to get to know Egyptian culture and to see Egypt, not to sit locked up at home all the time." "Well, get dressed then," he retorted. "I'm already dressed, so we can go." In the corridor he told me to be quiet and not to speak English so that none of the neighbors would know I was European. It was for my own safety. I didn't have a problem with it, it even seemed logical, and I kept quiet and just looked at the walls because they were beautifully painted. I must say that the Egyptians are really partial to paintings and decorations. When we went out into the street, there was no one there. The sun was up in full strength now, but all was quiet and still. A really strange feeling came over me because all of Egypt was still sleeping, whereas in my country everyone would be out and about by now. Occasionally some sellers could be heard. We walked a few steps and immediately met a vendor who had a wooden cart on which he sold fresh Arab bread. "Stand here," Abdelrahman told me, about 3 feet from the vendor. I stopped immediately and waited. Abdelrahman went to the vendor and talked to him alone. He bought about 10 loaves of bread from him, then he just waved at me and we moved on. We walked a few yards again and stood in front of the Curfew, a small store that sells absolutely everything but far more expensive than you could buy it from the supermarket. Again, Abdelrahman told me to wait for him outside. A moment later he returned with cheese, halawa and bananas. Then we went back home to have breakfast. I've eaten halawa, or Turkish honey-like sweetness, before, but this one was with nuts and pistachio. It was really delicious, but I'd never seen halawa eaten with cheese and a banana. I thought it was really weird, but Abdelrahman told me to try it. So I did, and actually I enjoyed it. I especially loved the combination of cheese with banana and Arab bread. Halawa was good to try, but I did not like it very much. However, the Egyptian bananas, or the hungry bananas as I nicknamed them, were fascinating. The more I ate, the hungrier I got and had to keep eating. I ended up eating a kilo of bananas, and I was really surprised because normally I would always eat 1 banana and I was full. The taste of food in Egypt is really different from Europe. All the food is distinctive, delicious, and you can never get enough. After breakfast I got a message on Facebook from my Egyptian friend. I texted him right away saying I was already in Egypt and whether he wanted to see me. His response was an immediate yes, I'd be happy to meet you, but I've got exams at the moment, so let's just leave it for another time. I was quite disappointed, but a few minutes later he called to tell me that he had cancelled the exams because of me and that he would meet me in San Stefan in an hour. I thought about how to tell Abdelrahman this. I was really worried about how he would react to it because I knew well that he didn't like me talking to other guys. Let's not forget I dated Abdelrahman online for about 3 years, so I kind of knew him. Well, what can I do now? I took all my courage and went to tell him. "Remember Higazi? The guy who met you in San Stefano once and gave me a report on you?" "Oh, yeah, what about him?" "I'm meeting him in San Stefano in an hour, could you take me there? You're going away again anyway, so at least I won't be sitting at home alone." He looked at me for a long time but didn't say a word. He just wanted me to give him my phone so he could call him and make an appointment. Everything went smoothly, and even Abdelrahman arranged to meet his friends in San Stefano as well. So I went to get dressed, but then Abdelrahman told me he needed money for the rent of the apartment. Of course, I obliged. I told him I'd give it to him because that's what my arrangement with him was. I didn't want any guy paying for me. I gave him 1,000 Egyptian pounds, and I still found some change from England, so I also gave it to him as a souvenir because I thought he would appreciate it. It's quite common in Europe for us to collect coins from different countries and then save them for remembrance. Abdelrahman thanked me but asked if he could borrow my phone. For what? I would like to show it to my parents. I had an HTC Touch phone and he had a very old push-button phone. I thought it was strange, but I didn't mind, so I lent it to him even though it meant I was without a form of communication for a while. Does your family even know I'm in Egypt? No, they don't. And they mustn't know. I told them that my English friends came to visit me and that I was their tour guide. All right. I didn't ask him any more questions and we headed out. Higazi was already waiting for us in San Stefano. I recognized him right away and was so glad to see him at last. He was a longtime friend of mine and he knew a lot of things about me, but instead of a warm welcome, he seemed really very angry with me. "Why are you angry?" I asked him. He looked at me honestly and just added, "You know why." Abdelrahman sat up and muttered, "So I'll be going now." He walked away in the direction towards his friends who were already waiting for him. Higazi and I were alone and able to speak frankly. "Then why are you angry?" I repeated myself. "You know perfectly well I'm upset because you didn't text me before you came here. I was so worried about you." "You didn't have to worry, you knew I was in Egypt." "Yes, I did, and that's exactly why I was worried about you. Why did you rent an apartment? You were supposed to be with me and my family." "I couldn't do it. I couldn't bother your family like that." "Fuck my family," he shouted at me and slammed the table with such force that he moved about a meter back with the chair. At that moment all the people around looked at us. Abdelrahman rushed over to me. "Are you all right?" I looked at Higazi and replied to Abdelrahman, "Yes, of course, you don't have to worry." "You really want to stay here with him? You know I won't be back for you until tonight." "Don't worry, it's okay." "All right, as you wish." Abdelrahman turned to leave. I turned back to Higazi. "Wouldn't you rather take a walk for a while?" "Yes, that would be better." We left and started walking around the mall, but both of us were silent. After a while I couldn't bear it. "Oh, come on. This was supposed to be our lucky day to finally see each other after all these years. Smile a little." "I can't smile at you when I'm mad at you." I honestly just looked at him and smiled until he laughed and said, "Of course this day is one of the happiest days for me." I do not have to say it out loud. Finally the air was clear again. "So anyways, what about your mom? How's she doing? Also, are you still praying on time like we talked about?" "My mom is great. She'd love to meet you, and yes, I'm praying right on time and I'll never stop. Would you like to meet my mother?" "Yes, of course, I'd love to." "All right, let's go." At the same time I stopped myself and remembered that Abdelrahman told me not to go out of the mall. However, Higazi was my friend, so I was sure everything would be fine. Higazi looked very nervous and kept looking behind him. I didn't understand why, but I felt as strange as he did. We got on the minibus and rode to his house. The journey took a long time and I kept looking out the window to remember the way, but I couldn't. It was getting dark and I didn't recognize where I was at all. I eventually gave up trying to figure out where I was. In the minibus we sat in the middle and Higazi was still passing money from one person to another and vice versa. I didn't understand why he was doing it, but he explained that the trip cost about 5 Egyptian pounds and that the driver had to get change for everyone. Since we were sitting in the middle, Higazi had the responsibility to distributing change to the other passengers. Oh yeah, only in Egypt. It was very funny for me, and once again I confirmed to myself that I was glad to finally be here. We finally reached Higazi's home. He lived in the middle of Alexandria in a large family building. I had barely walked in when everyone rushed to greet me enthusiastically. Suddenly, I heard someone running up the stairs and slamming into the door. I turned around quickly and saw a beautiful, tall woman without a headscarf running towards me. She started to hug me affectionately. She was Higazi's mom. She was really beautiful and she looked very kind. She was thrilled to finally meet me. After that I met his grandmother, his sisters, and his father. Then we went to Higazi's room, where once wished me a happy birthday on video chat. His mom brought us dinner there. This was the first day I wore a scarf and his mom told me right away to take it off. She implied that I could be with my hair showing here. Okay, thank you. I took the scarf off. Then I remembered something that Higazi and I once promised each other, which was that when we saw each other we would feed each other like little children. I know it was quite childish, but I started to really feed him. It made us laugh so hard and the food fell right into his lap. Well, as always, I am so clumsy. The rest of the evening we talked. When it was getting late I told him I wanted to go back home and that Abdelrahman would definitely be waiting for me in San Stefano. Higazi suddenly proclaimed that I wasn't going anywhere and that he wouldn't let me leave. This scared the hell out of me and I started to panic inside myself. Even his sisters wanted to lock me in the room so I wouldn't leave. Many things started flashing in my head, like what's in my apartment that I can't do without Abdelrahman and how he would worry about me. I couldn't stay here. I had to get back to Abdelrahman, and just like that, it hit me, I belonged to Abdelrahman. I began to persuade Hegazi to let me go, to return me to him. After a long time, he finally agreed to try to call him, but he told me in advance that he probably wouldn't pick up his mobile. The opposite was true. Abdelrahman picked up the phone immediately. I have no idea what they were talking about because I didn't understand Arabic, but suddenly Hegazi said to me that we were going back. We didn't say a word to each other the whole way through. I was honestly pretty upset and wasn't in the mood to talk to him, especially after his behavior and the awkwardness at his house. I was eager to just get back to San Stefano to see Abdelrahman. When we finally arrived, Abdelrahman was sitting in his car waiting for us. I didn't see him right away, but luckily Hegazi did. Look, there he is. Where? I wasn't used to searching for a car in the motorcade, and because Hegazi saw I really did not see him, he grabbed my arm and led me across the road to Abdelrahman's car. Of course I was very taken aback because it looked as if I was his girlfriend, plus Hegazi was making sure that Abdelrahman saw us holding hands. Even before we got to the car, Hegazi said to me, "You're going to show me where your apartment is, aren't you?" I didn't really think about it, so I said, "Yes, sure, why not?" But I had no idea what kind of trouble I was getting into. We got to the car and I sat in the front. Hegazi was in the back seat. "Hi," I said to Abdelrahman. He wouldn't even look at me and remained silent. He started driving and talking to Hegazi. After about 2 minutes, however, the car suddenly stopped, and I almost flew into the windshield. He turned angrily towards me and asked me in English, "So you told him you'd show him where your apartment was?" I stared at him in confusion. "Yes, why not? There's nothing wrong with that." Hegazi chimed in, "I just want to make sure she is okay. Do you think I'm going to hurt her or what?" Abdelrahman snapped back, "She came to see me and I'll take care of her." "Well, she didn't come to you because she told me first she was coming." Now they both turned to me in unison, asked me, "So who did you come to see?" I was really in a bind and had no idea what to do. Hegazi was right. I had written to him first to say that I was coming to Egypt, but didn't tell him when. In my mind I was working on how to get out of this awkward moment. A simple solution dawned on me. "You know what? I came to Egypt for myself, so leave me alone. Both of you." I screamed at them, opened the door, and ran out of the car. I ran like crazy down a long dark street, not knowing where to go or where I actually was. After a while it started to sink in. I was lost, so I stopped. At that moment Hegazi grabbed my arm and swung me toward him. I had no idea he was even running after me. "Where do you think you're going?" He yelled at me and started accusing me of a lot of things. I listened to him in silence for a moment, then walked back the way I had come. He grabbed my arm again, savagely. "Where are you going? Do you think I'm going to let you go?" "You're going to let go. You have no right to touch me. I'm going back to Abdelrahman. He's not there anymore. He's gone." "I don't believe you. He'll be there waiting for me, I know that." "Well then come and see." I started to get confused and inside myself wanted to cry. Quietly, very quietly, I began to pray that Abdelrahman would come back for me. "Didn't I say he wouldn't be here?" Hegazi poked me. Right then, like a miracle from God, I saw Abdelrahman's car coming back. He stopped right in front of me and I hurriedly jumped into his car. Before I could shut the door, Hegazi shouted at me, "You'll see that you will make the same mistake again as always." "No," I retorted. "I won't let myself make any more mistakes." I slammed the car door and Abdelrahman sped away. I never saw Hegazi again after that. Back at my apartment, I changed clothes and tried to persuade Abdelrahman not to be mad at me anymore, but it was to no avail. "Didn't I tell you to only be in San Stefan?" "Yes, you did, but he wanted to show me his family, and when I agreed to do so, I had no idea we were going this far. I thought he lived somewhere close." "Did you even know where he lived? Did you know it could have been dangerous for you to ride a minibus with him? You even didn't have your passport with you. Did you think about what could possibly happen to you?" "We only took the minibus. It's not a big deal. You only think that. You could have been mugged, robbed, or God forbid even raped. You don't know Egypt at all. I didn't really believe his words, but I kept listening to him. Did you also know he called me and told me you didn't want to come back? I never told him anything like that. He actually told me you weren't coming back for me. Did you take off your scarf while you were there? I looked at him guiltily. Yes, I did. His sisters told me I was at home so I didn't have to wear a scarf. Abdelrahman started screaming and banged on the wall. My love. She took off her headscarf in front of another man. I started crying really hysterically and yelled at him. Well, you know what? Then I'm a whore. I'm the worst person in the world. And I ran to another room crying. While I was in tears, he was sitting by himself acting all mad. After a while, he came to me and asked me some more questions, but this time more calmly. As we were reconciling, Higazi called him. Why is he calling me? I really don't know. He picked up the phone. Higazi told him that he had left his mobile in his car and that he really needed it. Abdelrahman asked me if he actually forgot the mobile there, but I really didn't recall that he had a mobile with him at all. I thought about it to be sure. No, he didn't have a mobile with him. So he's playing with me again? Abdelrahman got up and went out and told me he wasn't coming back until tomorrow. He locked me in my apartment for my safety and left.